I am Andrew Weisbrot.
No, I've been more.
We are interviewing Patrick McKowen. He served in the Marine Corps for the first Gulf War, and this interview is taking place on April 24th, 2009 in Myerstown, Pennsylvania. And this interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress.
Okay. Where and when were you born?
I was born in Lancaster County in 1961. I grew up in Leola, just outside of Lancaster City.
So what schools did you attend?
I went to Constant Valley High School, and I went to Millersville University. And after the Marine Corps, I went back to Millersville University to get my certification for teaching. And I currently attend Penn State York for a master's.
Where were you raised at?
I was raised in Lancaster County in a town called Leola, which is just right out 6 miles from Lancaster, and lived there my whole life until I got involved in the Marine Corps.
So I'm guessing you enlisted into the
I
Marine
did
Corps.
initially. When I was in college and I played rugby, and there was a guy who came out for the team, and I didn't really pay much attention to him. He was just kind of another guy that came out, and I was pretty into rugby. And then he was gone for like about a year, and he showed back up again. It looked totally different, like his manner, his confidence, his personality. And I really took notice of him at that point. We became friends. I talked with him a lot about that, and we got involved in talking about the Marine Corps and things like that. And so I did enlist when I was in college and was part of the reserves. And I liked that, and I decided to become an officer. So then the following summer, I went to Officer Candidate School. So I was enlisted, but I was commissioned.
So that's the reason you enlisted.
Well, no, that was part of the reason. Part of me, I grew up in kind of like an in-between stage. Like my brother was part of the draft, so I'm 47. So my brother is 57, and he was part of the would have been involved in the Vietnam era, and he never was drafted. He was in college and went to medical school. My father was, of course, in the military, so I kind of grew up with this expectation that you had to become part of the military. And when I found out that you didn't have to be today, I don't know, I was kind of disappointed in that, and I think all that kind of weighed on me. And then I had this friend, and we had a lot of conversations about the military, and I think just deep down I really wanted to be a part of it, in some way, and that's what led me to do it.
So how exactly did your family respond to your decision?
I think it was positive. Their response to me was positive. I don't know what kind of private conversations they had at least when I enlisted, because I went in as a private, and then they're probably happier that I became an officer. But
Did any other of your family members join at the same time or at any other time?
Just my father was. He's the only member of my family that immediate family that had ever served in the military. And he was in right after World War II was still going on. There was a big buildup for a possible invasion of Japan. He was part of that wave, and of course, before he had to get out of training, then the war was over. So he went to Germany instead. So he's the only member of the immediate family that's part of that was in the military.
So was there a conflict going on when you entered into the Marine Corps?
No, there wasn't. Let's see. I'm trying to think when Grenada was. There was nothing going on when I entered. It was just, then it hasn't been really for years. There were small conflicts like Grenada, and I guess it was when I was my first duty station. There was Panama. And there's only two that really stand out during the time where I was, interested or involved with the military prior to the Gulf War.
What more can you say or describe about the Operation Desert Storm?
Okay. I was stationed in Camp Pendleton, California. This is after my training. So I went to Officer Candidate School in the summer. I graduated college the following year, and went back to Quantico, Virginia, which is where all the Marine Corps officer stuff happens, to the basic school for 6 months. Went into the infantry officers course, the specialized training for infantry officers. And following that, my first duty station was Camp Pendleton. I was assigned to 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines, and 1st Marine Division. And we were part of, we're a deployable unit, meaning that you go through several months of building up for deployment, and then you go on a overseas deployment, and then you come back, and then you start your cycle over again. You start to build up to get ready for another deployment. So we were actually in our pre-deployment stage, building up for deployment, and part of that was just to take part in the Seattle Seafair. And so we were on. There's a fleet of ship goes up to Seattle. They have a big seafair, tours, parades, that kind of thing, and we were part of that. And so we were there when Saddam invaded Kuwait, and we found out that we would be going. We declared war and found out we'd be going. So at that point.
So how was your feelings about basic training?
Well, okay. There's officers candidate school, and then there's basic training. And basic training philosophies I would think are different. But one thing I found is that Marine Corps has been training for a long time. They know exactly what they're doing. When I reflect on it, they have there's no wasted motion in either place. I mean, in basic training, which is enlisted, the objective is to take your average everyday citizen and strip away all of the stuff he came in with and start to build him back up as a Marine. And in officer candidate school, the objective is to weed out people they don't feel would make good officers. So in one is to build you up, and in the other is to throw a lot of stuff at you to weed out the weak links before proceeding. So which do you want to hear about?
Well, when most of us think about training, is it really as challenging as many people think?
I would say the biggest challenge with boot camp, that would be the enlisted training, is it's more mental than anything. I mean, certainly it's physical there, and for some people that might be a challenge for them if they weren't active. But if you are reasonably active, then the physical challenges are pretty reasonable, pretty standard. But it's more of a mental thing. I mean, from the time that you arrive by bus to I went to Parris Island. Until you leave, everything is controlled, and so you've got to get used to that. I mean, from the time they step on the bus and start screaming at you to get off, a lot of people realize that they've just made the biggest mistake of their life, by signing that contract, because now they own you and everything is controlled. So that's probably the hardest part about boot camp, and they take you through all the basic stuff. Just like officer candidate school doesn't do that. They give you some history and things like that, but it's a lot more physical. You do I'd say 10 times more physical and less mental. The pressure you put on yourself, the pressure that's on you at candidate school is the pressure you put on yourself, whereas at boot camp they apply the pressure, and you're just
What was the title of your division or regiment that you were in?
I was part of 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines, 1st Marine Division. I was a second lieutenant and was assigned to a rifle platoon as my first assignment.
So in basic training, did they teach you to use any special machinery, such as heavy artillery or anything like that?
Okay, yeah. From this point on, when you say basic training, I'll just assume you're talking about officer training, and I'll just talk on that. At the officer candidate school, simply to select candidates to become officers. So like I say, it's a weeding out process. From that point on, if you make it through and you can accept the commission. So if you have a degree, then you accept the commission right away. If you are still in college, then when you graduate, you get commissioned. From there, that's the point that you go to your basic training, basically. It's a place called the Basic School, and they take you through all areas of the Marine Corps, every possible job that they have, and you get training in all those areas. At that time, you're just kind of general. You haven't specialized in anything. And then towards the end of your time at the Basic School, you have an opportunity to choose what you'd like to do. And then they select people for the different jobs, okay, whether it be artillery or supply or infantry. And then the exception to that is there are flight candidates, people who signed up to fly, okay? And they have, they're going to be going to flight school at some point, provided they can still continue to pass the physicals that go along with that, particularly the eye exams. So if they, everything stays fine with that, they're going to go their own route, whereas everybody else is going through, their specialized training for whatever field that they got picked for.
Of the machinery and whatnot you operated, was there anything that was really special or, like really big or something that was more than just a rifle?
Oh, okay. Well, we fire every medium weapon that the Marine Corps has up to 81 millimeter mortars. We don't fire the heavy stuff like the artillery or tanks, but everything from 81 millimeter mortars on down, we learn how to use and operate, and when we do fire. The machine guns, 50 caliber machine guns. Although in my job with the Marine Corps, I never fired 50 caliber. In training, I did, and I recall that as being pretty fun. And the 40 millimeter grenade launcher was pretty fun because it's a machine gun, and you can like pepper a whole hillside and move that out. As an officer, the biggest thing I fired was I was, after being a rifle platoon commander, I was an 81 millimeter mortar platoon commander, and so the mortars, what stands out there is just different things you can do. When you have to fire at night, you typically illuminate the area that you're going to be shooting into so that you can get a battle damage assessment, see what you hit and what you didn't hit, and make adjustments. And my philosophy was always to, at the same time the illumination was going to go off, to have high explosive rounds hitting the ground also, so that you didn't waste like that time. So that there would be no lag time from the illumination, and then send your fire mission. It would happen at once. Make your assessment, make your adjustments, and that. And I like that plus. The different things you could do with that. I mean, there was really a lot you could do, and with the mortars, and with you have 8 tubes, and you can you do quite a lot of damage. But so those things stand out in terms of training.
So you're trained to shoot anything that there was there, basically.
Everything up. Medium weapons and below, yes. Not artillery. I mean, I understand the concept behind it, but no, never have fired it, or a tank, or TOWs, or anything like that. I was part of a infantry regiment, and the infantry is broken down into battalions, and each battalion is broken down into companies. Each company has battalions broken down into companies. Each battalion has both rifle companies and they have a weapons company. The weapons company has the medium weapons, the machine guns, the grenade launchers, the mortars for the weapons and the dragons. And no, I take that back. In training, I did fire dragons. I never fired one in what we call the fleet, so I'm trained to fire all those things, but nothing larger than that.
Could you elaborate on the places that you had to visit whilst being in the Marine Corps?
Okay. Started, Camp Pendleton, California was the home base, and then from there we went to some different places. I guess my first deployment was to Honduras, and that was to do some joint training with their military down there. And then my overseas deployments, the first one I did was the Gulf War, and we went initially to Saudi Arabia, and then of course spent a few days in Kuwait. And following the Gulf War, then I went to Okinawa, and then from Okinawa did training in Japan and the Philippines.
Go ahead.
No, that's it. And then returned to the States, and I was got off active duty shortly after that.
Did you have any special duties as your group or individually?
I was a platoon commander, so my duties were, to train my platoon and make sure they were ready for combat. That was in training, of course, and combat was to lead the platoon in different combat operations. But Platoons are broken down into, you have a platoon commander, you have a platoon sergeant, then you have squads, and squads are broken down into fire teams. So you have 3 squads for a platoon, and then you have those are broken down into smaller units called fire teams. The Marine Corps is very decentralized in their command. The units are set up so that they can operate independently if necessary, modify the mission or modify their objectives to fulfill the mission, and are able to make those decisions based on what they see on the ground without a whole lot of interaction with higher ups.
So how often did you get to contact your family while you were gone?
When I was in the Gulf War, we got there. I guess Saddam invaded like early August. I'm thinking August 2nd stands out, and we deployed towards the middle part of August. And when we got there, it was pretty much us, and I think there was an Army unit. And so we were there at the early stages for the build-up. So we were there a long time prior to the start of the war. We were there for it was called Operation Desert Shield. And the one thing that the Marine Corps does is that they pre-position materials, meaning that vehicles, weapons, food, and stuff like that, they have those pre-positioned and different. So when we have to deploy, they can ship those to where we need to be and be there a lot quicker than shipping it from the United States. So we got there, and then our equipment linked up with us, and we got the equipment, then we began to move. Initially, I think we were on like a warehouse on a dock, and then from there we moved into the field. I think it was a quarry. We had a lot of initial problems allowing for having the government, Saudi Arabia, allow us to get out into the field and to dig fortifications in order to defend. So we had initial trouble with that until they got those things worked out. Then we began to move and steadily move up towards Kuwait. And as we did that and the build-up increased, then we had more areas in which were more base-like, okay? We had field positions, and then we had rear areas, I guess I'm trying to say.
Do you want to describe your uniform that you had? Like, was it different for every day, or, I mean...
No, we had camouflage utilities, and they were, white and brown, light brown, for the desert camouflage. We had, we did get new boots, though. We got these desert boots, which I guess are pretty much standard issue now, and that was a new thing for us. Somebody said General Schwarzkopf designed them himself. I don't know if that's true, but they were pretty comfortable. We just had our flak jackets and our helmets and our weapons.
What all did you carry at you? What was usually on your body at any moment?
Okay, we have a utility belt. On the utility belt, we have 2 canteens. We have our weapons, our ammunition. That's what I was trying to think of earlier. Ammunition pouches. We have, field knife, bayonet, usually a shovel, and a poncho, like a rain poncho, and just the basic things that you would need. Some food, if you were. We were mechanized when we were over there. We had Amtrak, so we had vehicles, and that's how we moved around. So a lot of other gear was on those Amtraks, but as we traveled pretty light. Just we have a backpack that we would take with us, but when you go into battle, of course, that just stays behind. But our standard issue was just to have our utility belt and whatever's on that utility belt, plus our weapons.
So how did you feel about all the sand?
Well, it took some getting used to, really. It got in everything. You would eat it with your dinner, you'd crunch down on it. It was just because the wind blew, and you'd have to clean your magazines, which are what you put your ammunition in, and also wipe down your bullets, pretty frequently, and of course keep your weapons clean, and because sand just got everywhere, and you breathe it, so it took some getting used to, but after a while, you just pretty much, it just became standard, normal.
How did the civilians react to the presence of all the soldiers there? I mean, they're foreign people. They probably didn't take that very well.
Well, we actually had very little contact with civilians. Like I said, when we initially got there, we were there pretty early. So when we were out in the field, I guess the Saudi government had built like these little towns, and I guess they were there for maybe oil workers or for workers or bringing in outside workers or whatever. And so I don't know, there was this little village that had buildings and that kind of thing. And that was like, it didn't look like it was being used. And so when we came back, that was like the first place we went to, and that was to get showers and haircuts and that kind of thing. And that eventually built up into kind of like a base. And then there was some interaction with civilians there because they would although we were hardly ever there, they would run, maybe the different stand. They might have like a little store or something like that on the little base. And but we went back by helicopter. And then as the build-up to the war continued, then we moved, the rear area kept moving forward. And then there was a pretty big area built up, a place that we termed, I don't know what it was called, we called it Manifa. And that was pretty much a tent city. And when we would go back to there from our forward positions, we started going by bus, and then the civilians would drive the bus. But in terms of being out in the field, really the only civilians we saw were nomads, they're sheep herds, and we didn't have any contact with them, interaction with them, other than to observe them. And there weren't, you have to imagine like a big wide open area with 1,500 people and vehicles and that kind of thing spread out over miles, okay, which is what we were. And so you just didn't walk down the street and run into anybody. They just, they weren't around.
So were you busy all of the time, or did you have a lot of downtime?
No, it was actually pretty busy. You're always training, so it doesn't matter whether you have a real life mission. And at the time during Desert Shield, it was of course to provide a shield to Saudi Arabia and prevent an invasion by Saddam should he decide to come out of Kuwait. So our real life mission was to have defenses to guard against that. And but while you're doing that, you still continue to train. And then as a platoon, we would patrol. Our real life mission was to patrol our frontage, and but we'd also train, continue to train and that kind of thing. And as the mission began to change towards one of our, offensive type mission, then we began to train different tactics on how we were going to hit the trench lines and do different things like that. But we would still continue to patrol at night and that kind of thing. So we would patrol all night and train during the day, and so it really was a pretty busy time.
How did you know when you had an action done? Were you given like a slip of paper every day that you had your time slots and where you had to be, or how did you know when to be somewhere?
The patrols, after a while, began to rotate amongst platoons. So it was just a rotation, and we'd send our patrol down to the company executive officer, set up the routes and where you wanted them to be and what you wanted them to do. So we'd send our patrols down there. And then we would just have, officer meetings, to pass out info, and I'd have a platoon meeting. We'd get information out that way that needed to go out. So not really a time schedule or anything like that. We just,
So how many men were you in charge of?
Well, just men. Just men. I had a rifle platoon, and it was reinforced. Every company has has rifle platoons, and it has a weapons platoon. The weapons platoon has mortars, 60 millimeter mortars, and it has 60 millimeter machine guns, and it has. I just can't think of what they're called right now. I don't even know if they use them anymore. We call them bunker busters. I can't think of the actual term for it. But they were demolition guys, experts who worked with demolitions. And so that's a weapons platoon. When you're reinforced, rifle company, rifle platoon, then you get, say, 2 machine gun squads. You get the demolition guys, and the mortars stay with the company, because that's, the captain's, that's his indirect fire weapon, the only one he's got, so he's going to keep that. But the other assets got passed out to the different platoons. So at that point, I probably had 54 people, 54 men, and then that's not including corpsmen. We had 3 corpsmen for the platoon, 1 per squad. Corpsmen were provided by the Navy. So we didn't, generally a platoon would have 1, but in that situation, each squad had their own corpsmen. So we had 3 of those. So I didn't, so in addition to my 54, we had 3 corpsmen, that's what I'm trying to say.
Were you busy all 7 days, or did you get Sundays off? I mean,
No, there's no weekends. It's just all 24/7. You're just going. We did get occasionally, like I said, with those rear areas that were being built up, we did get shipped back there for a couple of days just to grab showers and whatever. I guess the original question that I never got around to answering was I in contact with my family at all? How often did I? And that's why I launched into the build up of the rear areas and stuff. But eventually, they got a cell phone company in there and set up a tent back this area called Manifa, and so they had several like phone booth kind of things, and you were able to, when we got back there, we were able to get in there and stand in line and then make a phone call home. I guess I got 2 opportunities to make that phone call home, and neither time I didn't have anybody to call except my parents, and they weren't home. So, so I didn't talk to anybody. But you keep in contact through letters. Although I didn't write a whole lot of letters over there. I did get mail from other people. And that's pretty much how you were in contact, through mail.
Do you want to describe the reason for your choice to join the Marine Corps instead of any other military branch?
Sure. I never considered any other branch. My father was in the Army, but I never considered that. And when the idea starts to take formation, it doesn't really have a name or a face or a designated service. It just starts there. And what started there was simply growing up, feeling that part of growing up was become part of the military at some point. And like I said, when I realized or came to understand that was no longer a requirement, that I didn't have to, I was kind of disappointed, and I think that just kind of stayed inside me for a while. And like I said, that contact with that my friend who was at college, who I just kind of hadn't really noticed or thought much of, and then he just kind of made an impact on me, the change in him and like that's probably what got my thinking towards the Marine Corps. And as you get more into it, I kind of eliminated ideas of any other branches, because the only thing I wanted to do was infantry. And I think if you're going to do infantry, the place to do that is the Marine Corps. But of course, I'm biased. And so for me, it was always the Marine Corps. And I enlisted, and after my boot camp, and then I served in reserve unit. I pretty much had decided that's something I wanted to do. So then I looked in become an officer and applied to become an officer candidate, and was accepted and went on from there. But so as the idea took shape, it always just took shape around being a Marine as opposed to the other branches.
Was there a particular reason why you served for the amount of time you did?
Well, when I enlisted, it's for it's like an 8-year contract. So my total time served was 8 years, and so that was that's just the contract. So that's why it was that amount of time. And so after I decided I wanted to become an officer, I was like released from the service, and then kind of like I had to be released from the reserves to be able to go to officer candidate school. And then your standard, initial period of active duty is like 3.5 years or something like that. I'd have to look that up, but that's why. And then you come to a point, if you're a reserve officer like I was, and to be a reserve officer is everybody is a reserve officer unless you've gone through a military academy like the Naval Academy or Norwich, or you went through a Naval ROTC program and took the Marine Corps option. Then you would get out as a regular officer. And but most of us had to, after our initial period of time, would have to go from a reserve officer to a regular officer, I guess you'd say. So that's what happens then. So prior to that point, I realized that although I loved the time that I had spent, and what I did, and thought, was happy I had done it, I looked ahead at what was ahead for me in the Marine Corps. The further up you go, you take on more of a staff function, meaning that more of an advisory function. And I'll try to explain that. I was a rifle platoon commander, loved it, loved everything about it, loved being in the field, loved being with the men, and loved being on the front line. And I became an 81 millimeter mortar platoon commander after that, and I was more towards the rear at that point. Now, instead of being a company asset, I was now a battalion asset, so my scope kind of went bigger. So now part of my function is, along with running my platoon and providing indirect fire support for the battalion, was to advise battalion commander on targets and that kind of thing. I realized that as I went up, I was going to have more of that. Okay, you cycle in and out of the fleet. You're in a line company or battalion, such as I was, but then you do time at, say, a school, for like you might go to an officer candidate school to teach or to train officers or that kind of thing, or you might go to an embassy, okay, and be in charge of the embassy, the Marines the Marines there, and then you hope to come back to the fleet. You hope to go out and come back in at the right times. For example, you want to be a rifle company commander, but you've got to come back in at the right time. I mean, from your other duty, come back in at the right time to be able to get your rifle platoon. Then you've got to become a major. Majors generally are battalion XOs and all the kinds of stuff. And the big things that you want as an infantry officer, if that's what you want, is to be your company commander and to be your battalion and to be a battalion commander in an infantry company battalion. And there's timing involved in that, and there's other people involved in those decisions. And when I realized that I didn't really have control over that to a great extent, that was one of the reasons why I didn't know if I wanted to continue. For me, it was after we're sitting around right outside Kuwait City, and the company commander has us all there, and he's feeling pretty good because we just won the war, and he's asking us all what we want to do, okay, what we want to do next. The only thing I wanted to do was to be the company XL for the rifle company, and he goes, "Oh, that's easy. You got to come up with something better." And so the decision's not of my own. Being an 81 millimeter platoon commander is like a big deal because you're the only one in the battalion, and that's supposed to be like a feather in your cap to have that. And although it was a good experience, it wasn't something that I aspired to be. And that decision was out of my hands. So to make it I just kind of realized that those kinds of decisions, those career decisions, you have some input, but it's made by the people above you. And they're those that are looking out for you and want to put you in the right career path. And that's what my company commander was doing, putting me in the right career path. And, hopefully I'd have others down the line putting me in the right career path. It was just, realize that you didn't have a lot of control over where you ended up and where you went. And I think about the best Marine I ever knew. He really wanted to be Marine Corps recon, and but that was really basically the wrong career path, because you go recon, you come back in at the wrong time, you don't get your company and stuff like that. So, and I realized that decision he couldn't follow his goal because of the people saying you got to follow this career path. You want that company, you want that battalion, and that kind of thing. So I think all that kind of played into my decision making. When the time came to make a decision whether or not I was going to try to become a regular officer or whether I was going to just, go into the inactive reserves and then resign my commission when my 8 years was up, that had a lot to do with it. I loved what I did. I realized the higher up I got, the less I was probably going to like it, the further away I got from, doing what I like to do.
What was the reaction of you and your men when you heard that you're going to be going to overseas to fight desert?
Okay. Well, the reaction amongst the officers was a lot of high-fiving. It's kind of like a football team who trains all year, and if you don't get to play that football game, you're kind of disappointed. Of course, we were naive and young and had no concept of what war was. The reaction among men was more realistic. Here you have guys that are of all ages, from 18, 19, all the way up to married with kids and that kind of thing. So the reaction from them was a lot more realistic and a lot more subdued than it was from us. And of course, we as officers came to realize exactly what it was we were being asked to do, and sending our men into harm's way, and that becomes more sobering as you begin to get into it and think about what it actually means. So, but initially there was, we were on that ship, and we all had to run down to the ship library to find out where Kuwait was, because we'd never heard of it, and that kind of thing. So there was excitement.
Do you still stay in contact with people who served with you?
I stay in contact with a fellow platoon commander, and he stayed in actually, and but he stayed in through the reserves, and has done a number of really interesting things because of that. So he's really the only one I stay in contact with, and he was in my wedding, and he lives probably because he lives in Ohio, so it's we're closer than I would be with where the other guys are.
How long did you serve for?
Did you learn anything that made you a better person or gave you a different outlook on life?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I think you get out of things what you put into them and what you want to get out of them. And I certainly got out of the Marine Corps, what I wanted to and what I needed to. And, I was, definitely feel I made the right decision to be part of it. And I made the right decision to leave when I did. And I think it all, once you're a Marine, it all plays into what you do the rest of your life and how you carry yourself and what you get into. So it's definitely had an impact.
If you had a chance to go back, would you go back?
Yes, it would. It's okay. That's a theoretical question because I'm well over the age in which anybody would want me back. But would I go back, or if I would I do it again? Definitely. If I had a chance today to go back into the Marine Corps, now my situation's changed, considerably. I'm married with kids. When I was in the Marine Corps, I wasn't married. I didn't have a girlfriend. I could leave. Infantry is in the field a lot. We go out to train, and we're gone a lot, and or we go overseas, or we do different things like that, and I was free to do those things. I had no attachments, no ties, and that's changed today. It would be a different situation for me, and if I had a chance and I was young enough, I don't think I would go back, having had the experience already.
Was it hard to move on after you were done in the service?
I didn't really experience too many problems. It is an adjustment. Part of it's like you got to join the real world, in which you got to go to work every day and do the mundane things and that kind of thing, and that's part of just becoming that. But when I got out, it was to go to school, and I was to get my certificate for teaching, and so I was pretty busy then too. Didn't have a lot of time to think about it, and life just kind of moved on pretty quick. So I think it went pretty well. The hardest part is just you got to you're in an intensive environment all the time, and so you got to kind of decompress, and doing what I did when I got out and going to school. I was working a third shift. I was going to school during the day. I wasn't sleeping very much, so I kind of kept that intensive environment up for myself. So it was really a couple of years after I got out till I began, till all that began to ease up or change. I got a job and and that kind of thing, teaching, and wasn't working those crazy hours. But it does take a while to just kind of not be so intense, I guess you'd say, so alert to things, where you can go to sleep and actually, when somebody wakes you up, not become instantly alert, and not come up swinging, that kind of thing. So it does take a little bit of time for that.
Would you encourage your children to join the military?
Okay, I think the military is great, and if they should choose on their own to join, I, of course, would be proud of them, but I wouldn't encourage it because we are, of course, at war right now, and I don't want to see my kids go off to war as a parent because, I would encourage it for selfish reasons, and those selfish reasons being, as a parent, I don't, want anything to happen to my kids, but, I think it would be a fine career choice for them.
Do you have any advice for future fighters of America?
I had the opportunity. This guy I worked with here at school, he was teaching for a couple of years, and he wanted to become a Marine Corps officer. Don't really know why, but he wanted to, and so he applied and got in, and he went down to the school. And when he graduated, I went down and saw him graduate, and it was really just a pleasure to be back, on a Marine Corps base, seeing these Marines in action. The whole graduation was run by, enlisted and senior and junior NCOs, and without just on their own, getting it all set up, getting the band, ready to go, just the whole presentation of the graduation, was just run. It was run like clockwork. It was just really cool to watch these guys in action do their thing without, some supervisor standing over them telling them what to do. And I think, out here we have a lot of bosses and supervisors who are just constantly, micromanaging us, and it's cool to see that. So I guess my point is that the military, I think, attracts some, a good quality of people, and I think that they, they're probably the best, that we've been, and continue to become strong and good. They have excellent training. They're able to operate and think and do on their own to a greater extent than I think that we can in the civilian world. So I don't really have any advice for them. I think, they're doing a great job, and I have no pointers to give.
Pretty much it. I don't think we have any more questions for you. We thank you for your time
Very
and all the
much.
information you gave, and we'll make sure you get a copy of this edited.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks
Thank
a
you
lot.
very much.
You're welcome.